players would already be striking. If it comes down to not budging on the rev split situation, a strike would already have happened. The strike would already have happened. There's no way in hell the players will get the revenue structure that they want. They could get the pay that they ask for, or close to the pay they ask for, but they can't get the structure because of the way the league's payment is structured. And Adam Silver shut that down from the very start.
We're 6 days away from what could be the most important weekend in WNBA history. And I'm not talking about the All-Star Game. All-Star Weekend in February 2026 is either going to be a celebration of where this league is headed, or it's going to be ground zero for a strike that could destroy everything the WNBA has built over the past 27 years. And here's what makes this moment so critical. The players haven't said a word since the league dropped their latest contract proposal. That's silence. That's not normal. These players are notoriously terrible at keeping secrets. If they were planning to walk out during All-Star Weekend, we'd already know about it. Someone would have posted something cryptic on social media. A reporter would have caught wind of internal discussions. But there's been nothing. Radio silence. Which means one of two things is happening right now. Either they're being strategically disciplined for the first time in league history, or they're actually considering this offer seriously enough that a strike isn't guaranteed. Before we dive into what's really happening behind closed doors, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This negotiation is moving fast, and you don't want to miss the updates as they break. Let's get into it.
At the end of the day, though, they did offer an extra $50K per player. And I don't think the league are going to accept this proposal, by the way. But my guess is the league are going to come back and say, okay, and instead of talking about split percentages and everything, say 7 million. 7 million. All the projected. When you're talking about, oh, you know, we'll give you, this is your base and it can work up to this. No. What you say we can work up to, that's now our base salary. And push it up to 7 million. For 12 players, it's an average of 600K each, 1.5 million max. And we're good. That is what I think the players will come back with. And that is an amount that I don't think the league are going to push back on. I don't think they're going to push back.
So here's where we actually are right now. The WNBA just put a proposal on the table that includes an extra $50,000 per player, improvements to housing situations, charter flights for the entire season, and better rookie contract structures. On paper, that sounds like a massive win. $50,000 per player across 12 roster spots is $600,000 per team. 4 mid-level and lower-tier players who make up the majority of rosters. That's life-changing money. But the Players Association hasn't responded yet. And that strategic silence is about to determine whether there's even a 2026 season. Because what they're preparing to counter with isn't just about the dollar amount. It's about the fundamental structure of how players get paid in this league. The league wants to pay an average of $5.65 million per team in total salary. The players initially pushed for $10 million per team. That gap between those numbers represents the entire battlefield of this negotiation. And my prediction? They're going to land somewhere around $7 to $7.1 million per team per year. That would roughly break down to $600,000 per player on average, with max contracts hitting around $1.5 million. That's double what many players make right now, and it's an amount the league can actually justify without blowing up their entire revenue structure.
Per team per year, I don't think the league is going to be, not the league's not going to push back on it. I don't think the league are going to say no, and I think it's going to be done. That would be my assumption. 50,000 more per player is pretty nice, well as extra housing. Issues current rookie deals. Last year, the older players seem to touch on the contention issues with majority of low to mid-level players, which are the majority. My guess is that the WNBA explained they want better gross revenue share. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And my guess in a meeting is like, look, we can work with you on some things, but with the way our league revenue is structured, we can't.
Because here's what most people don't understand about this negotiation. This isn't really about the total dollar amount. It's about how that money gets calculated. And that's where everything gets complicated. The players want a percentage of league revenue that grows automatically as the WNBA grows. Makes sense, right? If the league brings in more money, players should see more money. That's how it works in the NBA, the NFL, the MLB. But the WNBA is offering fixed amounts that require renegotiation every few years. One model gives players ownership of their own growth. The other keeps them dependent on periodic bargaining. And the league absolutely cannot give them that percentage structure. Not because they don't want to, not because the math doesn't work, but because there are NBA owners with voting power over WNBA decisions, and multiple owners would rather shut the league down entirely than agree to percentage-based revenue sharing that limits their future profit potential.
It is unfortunate for the players, but I do think in general that they can obviously go and look for more money, which I think they're going to do. The players have not responded with an inflatable rat. The players have not responded to this. And by the way, like, it is Monday. All-Star Weekend is Saturday. These players are not very good at keeping secrets, by the way. They're not very good at it. If they were going to strike at All-Star Weekend, we would know. We would absolutely know if they are going to strike on All-Star Weekend. It is obvious that this is being considered. And I think the league are going to, or the players are going to go back to the league.
Think about that reality for a second. The players are negotiating with people who have a financial incentive to see them fail. These aren't just neutral parties trying to find fair middle ground. Some of these NBA owners have been subsidizing the WNBA for nearly 3 decades, watching it lose money year after year. And now that the league is finally approaching profitability, they're not about to voluntarily give up future revenue streams because it's the fair thing to do. Adam Silver shut down the revenue-sharing conversation from day one. Not as a negotiating tactic, as a hard line drawn in concrete. Because the ownership structure of this league includes stakeholders who genuinely believe women's basketball isn't worth the investment. And those people have just as much say in what happens as the owners who actually support the WNBA's growth. So the players are stuck in an impossible position. They're being asked to negotiate with a system that's rigged against them from the start. And yet, walking away from the table means there's no season at all. No paychecks. No platform, no momentum from Caitlin Clark's historic rookie year, carrying over into year 2.
If the league wants to pay $5.65 million, the players wanted 10, somewhere in the middle. Maybe 7. Maybe 7. 7 to 7.5 million. And that's something that I do believe that they can negotiate for. Because at the end of the day, if they try to argue what they believe they deserve, there's always the side of the owners and of a lot of other people that, well, your league lost money for 30 years and was being propped up by the NBA.
The entire future of professional women's basketball in America could come down to decisions made in the next 72 hours. Now let's talk about what the league probably told them in private meetings, because this is where the actual conversation happens. Not in press releases or social media statements, but in closed-door rooms where lawyers and team representatives lay out the real constraints. My guess is the WNBA explained something like this. We understand you want revenue sharing that scales with league growth. We want that for you too. But here's the reality nobody's saying out loud. Our ownership structure includes NBA teams who've been subsidizing this league since 1997. Some of those owners are supportive, some are neutral, and some actively want to shut this down and stop losing money. Those owners have voting power. They can block any CBA that fundamentally changes how revenue gets distributed. And if we push them too far, they won't just vote no. They'll vote to dissolve the league entirely. That's not a threat. That's the actual political reality of how this league is structured. Because the people with the most financial power in this negotiation are multi-billionaires. And you don't become a billionaire by leaving money on the table because it's the right thing to do. You become a billionaire by protecting every revenue stream and maximizing every investment. That's not a moral judgment. That's just how capital works at that level. These owners spent 27 years funding losses. They're not going to hand over profit participation the moment the league becomes viable. They're going to extract every dollar they can, and the players have almost no leverage to stop them. Except for one thing, the threat of a strike that destroys the league's momentum entirely. And that's why this moment is so dangerous for everyone involved. Because the WNBA finally has mainstream attention. Caitlin Clark's rookie season brought unprecedented viewership. Ratings doubled in some markets. Attendance spiked. Merchandise sales exploded. Casual fans who never watched women's basketball before are now checking scores and following storylines. The league is more viable than it's ever been. But business doesn't run on what you deserve. It runs on leverage and existing contracts. And the players are trying to renegotiate while the league, has all the structural power. So why haven't the players responded yet? Because they're doing the math on what a strike would actually cost. It wouldn't just be their 2026 salaries. It would be the entire trajectory of the league at the exact moment when momentum matters most. Caitlin Clark's second season, which networks are already building promotional campaigns around, would be gone. Paige Bucher's rookie year would be delayed. The expansion teams in Golden State and Toronto would have to postpone their debuts. And casual fans who just started paying attention, they'd move on to something else. The WNBA has spent 27 years trying to break through to mainstream relevance. They finally did it in 2024. A prolonged strike in 2026 could erase all of that progress in a matter of weeks. That's not an argument against the players' right to strike. It's a recognition of what the actual stakes are. Because the league isn't bluffing when they say the ownership structure won't allow percentage-based revenue sharing. There really are NBA owners who would rather fold the WNBA than change the financial model. So the question becomes, is fighting for the structure you deserve worth risking everything you've built? Neither option is satisfying. Taking the deal feels like surrender. Striking feels like potential destruction. But one of those options keeps the league alive. Here's what makes this entire situation even more frustrating. The players aren't wrong about what they deserve. The WNBA is generating real revenue now. Sponsorship deals are bigger. Media rights are more valuable. The product on the court is better than ever. And the players driving all of that growth are still making a fraction of what they'd earn in comparable men's leagues. A star making $250,000 in the WNBA would be making millions in the NBA with similar impact. That disparity is real. It's unfair. And it's exactly the kind of inequality that should be corrected through collective bargaining. But fairness and strategy are two different calculations. The players who are making $75,000 right now could be making $125,000 next season. The mid-tier players making $150,000 could jump to $250,000 or more. The stars making $250,000 could be pushing $500,000 to $600,000. That's life-changing money for the majority of the roster. And it's money they won't see at all if there's no season. So the Players Association has to weigh short-term gains against long-term structural change. Do they take significant pay increases now and fight for revenue sharing in 3 years when their leverage is stronger? Or do they force the issue right now and risk everything? My prediction is that by Friday, February 14th, one day before All-Star Weekend, we're going to see an agreement. The players will counter with $7 million per team as their base structure. The league will accept it because the difference between their $5.65 million offer and $7 million is only $1.35 million per team per year. Across 12 teams, that's $16 million annually. The league can absorb that cost without changing their fundamental revenue model. Both sides will claim victory. The players will say they secured historic pay increases and better working conditions. The league will say they demonstrated commitment to player compensation while maintaining financial sustainability. Everyone moves forward. We get a season. But make no mistake, this fight isn't over. It's just delayed. Because eventually, the WNBA's revenue structure has to evolve. You cannot have a league generating hundreds of millions in revenue while paying players fixed salaries that don't scale with growth. That model might work for 3 more years, but it won't work for 10. At some point, the NBA ownership structure has to change. At some point, the WNBA has to operate independently with its own ownership group that's actually invested in the league's success. At some point, players have to get the percentage-based revenue sharing that every other major professional sports league provides. But that point isn't today. Today is about whether there's going to be a 2026 season. And my bet is yes, because neither side can afford for the answer to be no. The players need the platform and the paychecks. The league needs the momentum and the media attention. Walking away from the table right now benefits nobody. So watch what happens over the next 6 days. If we hit All-Star Weekend without an agreement, then we're in real trouble. But if the players come back with that $7 million counter and the league accepts it, then we're going to see Caitlin Clark's sophomore season, Paige Bucher's rookie debut, and the continued growth of women's basketball at the professional level. That's what's actually at stake here. Not just money, not just principle, but the entire future trajectory of the league at the exact moment when it finally has mainstream momentum. The question is whether both sides are smart enough to recognize that and make a deal that keeps everything moving forward. Because here's the brutal truth about labor negotiations in professional sports. The side with less to lose usually wins. And right now, the owners have significantly less to lose than the players. The NBA owners funding the WNBA can absorb another year of losses. They've been doing it for 27 years. But the players? They can't get this year back. They can't recreate the momentum from Caitlin Clark's rookie season. They can't recapture casual fan attention once it's gone. So the smart play, even if it doesn't feel satisfying, is to take the $7 million per team deal, lock in salaries that double what most players currently make, get the housing improvements, the charter flights, the better rookie contracts, and build the league's popularity for another 3 years. Then come back to the table in 2029 with even more leverage, higher ratings, and a stronger negotiating position. Is it fair that players have to wait? No. Is it fair that the NBA's ownership structure constrains what the WNBA can do? Absolutely not. But fairness and strategy are two different things. And here's what really tells you where this negotiation is headed. The Players Association has been very vocal throughout this process. They posted long statements about fighting for what they deserve. They called out the league publicly for not recognizing their value. They made it clear they were willing to strike if necessary. But since the league's latest proposal dropped, silence. That silence is strategic, because if they were planning to reject the offer and strike at All-Star Weekend, they'd be building public support right now. They'd be posting on social media about standing firm. They'd be giving interviews about why they have to take this stand. Instead, there's nothing, which suggests they're seriously considering accepting some version of this offer. Now it's Monday, February 9th, 2026. All-Star Weekend starts Saturday, February 15th. That's 6 days away. And these players have shown repeatedly that they struggle with keeping information contained. Remember when the Players Association posted that entire statement about the NBA trying to hold them back, then randomly mentioned people sending angry emails to Commissioner Kathy Engelbert about something completely unrelated? That kind of emotional venting in the middle of serious negotiations shows you how this group operates. They lead with emotion rather than calculated strategy. So if they were planning a strike, we'd know by now. The fact that we don't know anything suggests a deal is closer than people think. Here's the other factor nobody's talking about. The Players Association leadership knows that a strike right now could permanently damage relationships with the league's most important supporters. The fans who showed up for Caitlin Clark last year, who bought tickets and jerseys and watched every game, those fans want to see basketball. They don't want to hear about labor disputes and revenue sharing percentages. They want to watch the product. And if the players strike during All-Star Weekend, which is supposed to be a celebration of the league's growth, they risk alienating the exact audience they need to build long-term value. So what's the play for the Players Association right now? Counter with $7 million per team. Frame it as meeting in the middle between the league's $5.65 million offer and their original $10 million ask. Lock in the housing improvements, the charter flights, and the better rookie structures. Declare victory on securing historic pay increases. Then use the next 3 years to build the league's brand even bigger, so that when they come back to the table in 2029, they have undeniable leverage for percentage-based revenue sharing. If you want to stay updated on how this all plays out, drop a comment below with your prediction. Do you think the players take the deal, or do we see a strike at All-Star Weekend? And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the breaking news when it happens. Now, here's why I'm confident we're going to see a deal by Friday. The league has already shown they're willing to increase their offer. That $50,000 per player addition to the proposal wasn't their opening move. It was a response to player pushback, which means there's room for one more counter before both sides lock in. The players will come back with $7 million per team, and the league will accept because the math works. $16 million annually across the entire league is manageable. It doesn't require restructuring how revenue gets shared. It's just a higher fixed number that both sides can justify to their stakeholders. The players get to say they fought for significant increases and won historic gains. The league gets to say they listened to player concerns and made a substantial investment in talent. Fans get to watch Caitlin Clark's second season and Paige Bucher's rookie debut. Networks get the content they've already started promoting. Everyone wins, except, of course, for the long-term structural issue of revenue sharing, which gets pushed down the road. And that's the real story here. This negotiation isn't actually solving the fundamental problem. It's just kicking it 3 years into the future, because the WNBA's ownership structure is eventually going to have to change. You can't have a league controlled by NBA owners who view it as a charity project rather than a legitimate business. You can't have stakeholders with voting power who actively want to shut the league down. And you can't have a compensation model that doesn't scale with revenue growth. All of those issues are still going to exist in 2029. But maybe by then, the league's revenue will be so undeniable that even the skeptical NBA owners can't ignore it. That's the bet the players are making if they accept this deal. Take the money now, build the league bigger, come back stronger later. It's not the fight they wanted. It's not the structural change they deserve. But it's the strategic calculation that keeps the league alive and growing. And in 3 years, when viewership has doubled again and Caitlin Clark is an established superstar and Paige Bueckers is a household name, the players will have leveraged the current roster can only dream about. So here's my final prediction on how this plays out. Wednesday or Thursday, the Players Association counters with $7 million per team as their base salary structure. They frame it as a fair compromise that recognizes player value while acknowledging the league's financial constraints. The league accepts by Friday morning. Both sides issue statements praising the collaboration and commitment to growing women's basketball. All-Star Weekend happens as planned. The season starts on time, and everyone moves forward knowing they'll have to fight this battle again in 2029. But for now, we get to watch basketball. We get to see if Caitlin Clark can build on her record-breaking rookie season. We get to see if Paige Bueckers lives up to the hype. We get to see the Golden State and Toronto expansion teams debut. We get to see if the WNBA can sustain this momentum and become a permanent fixture in American sports culture. That's what's actually on the line here. Not just this year's salaries or this year's season, but the entire future of professional women's basketball at the exact moment when it finally has a real chance to succeed. The question is whether both sides are smart enough to recognize that opportunity and make the decisions that keep it alive. My bet, they are, because walking away right now benefits nobody. And at the end of the day, even with all the frustration and inequality and structural problems, everyone at that negotiating table wants women's basketball to succeed. They just disagree on how to get there. But disagreeing on the path forward is different than walking away from the journey entirely. So keep your eyes on the next 6 days. This is the home stretch. By this time next week, we'll either have a deal and a season, or we'll be staring at the biggest crisis in WNBA history. Let me know in the comments what you think happens, and don't forget to subscribe so you're here when the news breaks. This is history happening in real time, and you don't want to miss it.